The online publishing industry, originally based in print, is moving rapidly to the internet. It's an $82 billion a year business, and these areas, online newspapers, ebooks, and online magazines, are where the high growth is. So it's this conversion, this transformation from print to the online variations and repackaging and redesign. Online newspapers, 24 of the top 25 print newspaper umpires have failed in the last 10, 15 years. They ran into a number of, hide their head in the sand types of not really embracing where the internet was going and coming to fruition and how users would use that. They failed to protect their content from free distribution. So the staffs of newspaper businesses across the board are significantly reduced, but online readership is growing. So that's where their business is seeing growth. Mobile and tablets, obviously. More users are willing, again, to pay for premium. Aggregators are being recognized for bringing content in from a variety of areas to distribute to the masses through the internet, as well as put together nice advertising models around the aggregation of content. So, unique visitors at online newspapers. I keep talking about the New York Times, also USA Today, Tribune, very big. Tribune also big in television. So there's a nice play there of old school that's making a good adjustment to online. Washington Post and Hearst, a little bit less so. And then Wall Street Journal with very specialized content. But the New York Times remains the top, with USA Today as a close second. So the newspaper models, again, as I mentioned earlier, New York Times initially fee-based, then they had to give that up and go free, but now they're beginning a return to the paywall. Newspaper headlines are primarily content on Google News, Yahoo News. So again, that's a headline piece of it with links back to those newspapers' online pages. So the New York Times, again, now charging. Newspapers are really looking to hook up with internet portals such as Yahoo and AOL to get their content out. And then the new reader devices with reader apps. So Kindle on the iPad, very important component for reading of newspapers and print content. So disruptive technologies obviously posing challenges to newspapers, and it is a classic case of disruptive technology and very much in flux. While they have significant assets of readership, advertising, local with content, local advertising, and audience, mainly non-millennium, but much older and better educated, though the online audience will continue to grow in numbers and sophistication, the reality is, not shown on this chart, is that most millennials, I would imagine yourselves, do not read newspapers in print and potentially even online. So just a comment on that, many millennials are getting their news through, you mentioned earlier, the headlines on Google News and Yahoo. Another one that's got to be added there is Twitter. Twitter is a huge resource for newspaper-oriented headlines. I'll tell you a little story about that. When I was Chief Information Officer of Real Savvy Media back in 2008, 2009, we were looking at Twitter, trying to figure out how we use it, and weren't really sure as a content publisher and content distributor how we would use that. So here's what happened. My Twitter account rang up one day, I believe it was in January of 2009, and it showed that it got me to get up out of my chair and go to the window and look out into the Hudson River. Why? An airplane had just landed in the Hudson River. 20 minutes later, people in our online publishing company saw on CNN a news flash that a newspaper had, an airplane had landed in the Hudson River. Now, Twitter beat that out by 20 minutes through headlines, through an individual who was crossing the Hudson on a shuttle boat, a commuter boat. I happened to met that gentleman a few years later, 2 years later, at a conference that we both spoke at. And what was real interesting is that he became a social media consultant after that, because he was the one who broadcast that news that went around the world before the news outlets even had that. So that's a very interesting story on how disruptive this technology is. Ebooks and online publishing, exploding sales, billions of dollars. New channels for self-published authors, My Blood Approves. So if you look at where digital, print to digital technology has gone, projects like Gutenberg and Voyager books on CDs in the 90s, and Adobe's PDF format taking really industry by storm in the late 90s, were early evolutions. Now the new digital ecosystems with Kindle linked to the Amazon store and cloud storage to buy books, to rent books, to load up. I load up PDFs onto my Kindle, which is on my iPad. So I actually use my Amazon account, Kindle account, to manage my personal documents that I read on my iPad using Kindle, as well as my purchases of books that are run on those. So the iPad multi-purpose tablet hooked up to the Apple stores, as well as the Amazon store, so I can get even more content. And then again, authors are able to bypass agents and publisher channels, write their books, publish them on digital channels, and distribute them. So digital rights management in the book industry seems to be in a much better state. It's much more difficult to copy books than it is to copy music. So that's working well in terms of protecting authors' rights. Challenges for ebooks platforms. There are few physical sales. Realistically, people are still, learning to adopt. While there are fewer book sales, and publishers do come out with textbooks, ebooks are becoming more and more prevalent. But finding the right business model, either a wholesale model or an agency model, are still being worked out. Interactive books are becoming more and more prevalent. The whole iBook model is becoming more interesting. Ebook sales growing steadily, tenfold since 2010, projected out through 2016. Magazines are beginning to rebound after plummeting for 32 years from 1980. A rise in online video and news readership, and also the cost of color printing that are increasing. Digital magazine readership has doubled. I personally use things like Wired magazine on my iPad, terrific digital magazine. And there's magazine aggregators like Fluid, which allow you to bring all your magazines into one newsstand that can be easily obtained and then searched and read from.